everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all the picture books that my daughter got for her birthday. My daughter just turned 3 years old. We have plenty of toddler clothes because both of her grandmothers have toddler clothes shopping addictions. We have way too many toys. In fact, like sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in toys. And the public libraries here have been closed for 4 months now. We read a lot of books here, of course, and we're reading the same books over and over and over again. Can't take it anymore. I needed some new stuff to read. So I made my friends an Amazon wish list. So most of the books that we got were just off of that wish list because that made it easy for them. A lot of the books ended up being sort of under the category of anti-racist kids books, or like we need diverse kids books. That's a major focus of mine right now. We've also got some science books and some books on coping with feelings, which is really important for kids in this age group. It can really help them with their emotional regulation skills to read about how to cope with big feelings that we have sometimes. So the first book that we got that my daughter has been absolutely loving is Soulway, and it's by Lupita Nyong'o. I love that there's a big picture of the author on the back, and I wish that more books did this, but I think especially for this book, talking about colorism, especially as a white parent reading this book to my daughter, it helps to have a big picture of the author and stress that like these words are coming from her. This is a book about colorism. It's told with a beautiful fable. So this girl, Soulway, born darker than the other members of her family, and she's picked on for it. It talks about kind of how she tries to change her skin color. Her mother tries to tell her that, you know, her brightness comes from inside. And then a star visits her and she goes on a magical adventure riding on this star, and the star tells her a myth of two sisters, night and day, and how people treated them differently until they realized that they needed night just as much as they needed day. The art is obviously breathtakingly beautiful, and the myth is fun and magical and mystical and engaging for kids, and yet it talks about colorism in a really serious way. I think this is absolutely one of the best books that I've ever seen, like addressing this topic. And my daughter, who's 3 years old, is absolutely in love with this book and has been asking for it every single night. It may, again, make some white parents might feel nervous about reading a book like this where a Black character with dark Black skin is feeling self-hatred at the beginning of the book because of her skin color. But I think, again, it helps to have the author's picture on the back, and there's an author's note where the author talks about how when she grew up she was teased for the color of her skin and kind of how she came to terms with it. And my daughter actually sat and listened to this. Even though she's only 3, she was able to listen to that text and she was kind of curious. So I would encourage all parents to purchase this book. I think it's really a treasure. If you're white and you feel nervous about reading this to your kid, just like get over that. Another book that I thought was really great and my daughter's been asking for by name is Amy Wu and the Perfect Bow. This book reminds me a lot of some of the books I talked in my other video, picture books about Asian American and Pacific Islander characters. It's once again dealing with Asian food, making Asian food, and celebrating that aspect of Amy's Chinese heritage. The art is really fun. Basically, it's about this girl who she can't make the perfect bow. All her bow buns are turning out kind of loppy, or they're just not filled right, until she finally figures out that her parents are cutting the dough for grown-up size hands and she has small hands, and so she needs smaller pieces of dough. And once she gets smaller pieces of dough, she's able to make the perfect bow for her size. And so it's a book about problem solving, it's celebrating culture. There's a recipe in the back. I think one week I might do a challenge where we just make all the recipes that are in kids books that we have. We've done that with the book Hanukkah Bear at Hanukkah time. We read that book a lot and we made the latkes from it. And now my daughter is begging to make bow, and she like is starting to get into imaginative play. The other day she came up to me and was like, "Mommy, my hands are too small. I can't make the perfect bow." So she's really like inhabiting this book. Definitely highly recommend this. Next book, we got, someone sent us Hair Love, and I put this on my list because my daughter loves the short film that this book is based on. I was a little disappointed to find that the picture book took out some of the most impactful emotional elements of the story. So it's still a story about the father doing his daughter's hair, but they kind of took out the fact that the mother has cancer. In the story, you find out like this is the girl's mother. She's like a YouTube hair guru. The daughter is having to use her video to figure out how to do her hair because her mother has cancer. That was kind of the emotional heart of the story. If you've watched the video enough, you'll probably still pick that up from the story because the mom shows up at the end with her hair under a wrap. But it's a lot more subtle in the story, and I'm just curious why they did that. There are plenty of kids who have parents with cancer, and I think that this book would be helpful for them and to have that plot element retained. So I was a little surprised by that. My daughter loves reading books about people with curly hair. She doesn't have, obviously she's not black, but she has curly hair, and so she loves books about curly haired kids. To also just learn about, you know, kids with different hair textures and what are like cultural hair practices that are different from their own or the same as their own. Obviously this book would be great representation for black kids who do have textured hair like this. So I definitely recommend this one as well, although I'm curious why they took out sort of the really emotional heart of the story. These two are actually not on my Amazon wish list, but a friend of mine who kind of saw that I was going with like an anti-racist theme, I think, picked these out for me. Both of the books just talks about how people have all different skin colors and we can all play together. I always like a book with photographs. I talked about that in another video, that children seem to respond really well to actual pictures of other kids. Something about both of these books though that I kind of have a question mark about is using food words to describe people's skin. So in the Twitter writing community, there has been a lot of discourse on how it's not appropriate and it can be fetishizing. It has a long problematic history of referring to people of colors, skin tones as food, sort of commodifying them and fetishizing them. And it's pretty much conclusively come down as a best practice to not describe people's skin tones using food. And certain people of color disagree with that, and they're like, I'm gonna keep referring to my skin as this. But that's been sort of the overwhelming consensus and the guidance given to white writers not to describe people of color using food words for skin tones. So just sticking to straight colors. Both of these books, refer to, here's coffee, cocoa, like using food words to describe different skin tones. They're both a little bit dated. This one's from 2009 and this one's from 2015. We have a book by Sesame Street called We're Different, We're the Same that kind of has the same themes, but there isn't that problem of using food words to describe people. The next book was one that I actually had ordered myself for Ramona's birthday. It's the last one in sort of this anti-racist category, and it's called Antiracist Baby. This is by Ibram Kendi, a teacher and an educator and activist that I really admire and I've learned a lot from. This book, I think it ends up being a book that's really more for parents than for kids. So the art is great. Like the art alone may be compelling enough to hold little baby's interest, but I did try reading this book to my daughter and it's just like, the language is going way over her head. So yes, it is important to talk to kids, very young kids, about race, starting like from the beginning. And like I said, I think a book like Soulway does that really well by incorporating mythology and a story and emotions that kids can really relate to. This book is a list of 9 kind of abstract concepts. For example, number 3 is point at policies as the problem, not people. Some people get more while others get less. That's sort of a concept that if explored in a story, like kids could get, but because policies don't always grant equal access. Like that sentence, some precocious late elementary school kids could understand this sentence. Probably more middle school kids would be able to kind of grasp the concept of like policies that don't grant equal access. If you told a story that was illustrating how policies don't grant equal access, that's something kids could maybe understand. But it's all good reminders for parents on how to be anti-racist. And the last page has suggestions on how to talk to your kids about race. So if that's something that as a white parent you really don't feel comfortable about, this book is maybe for you. And I think that's good. I think we should support this book and this author. But I do wonder, like, once kids are at the age that they can really understand the abstract writing of this book, are they going to want to be reading a book with a baby on the cover? Because usually by the time they're in older elementary, kids are like very into, oh, I'm not a baby. I think you could also supplement this book, but you'll have to like talk about what's going on in the picture. Just talk about what this might be a picture of with your kids. Just kind of simplify the idea. Anti-Racist Baby is raised to make society transform. Having been like an ESL teacher for years and a literacy teacher for years, like a concept of like society transform, those are like high level words even for middle schoolers to grapple with. So how can you make that like more concrete for kids? Like, oh, they want to help, these people are marching with signs because they want to help other people have better lives. They want to help make the world more fair for everybody. You'll just have to sort of help your kids access this book because it is very abstract. The next two books fall into the science category. I've been trying to get my daughter more interested in nonfiction. She is really just at an age where she's responding to stories and she wants to read stories. But I had high hopes for this Big Book of series. There's Big Book of Bugs, Birds, Beasts, there's a bunch of these. Someone sent me the Big Book of Birds off this list. I am obsessed with this art. It is so beautiful. So each page kind of takes a different species of birds and gives you some interesting facts about them. I love when books have questions that parents can use to ask their kids and sort of engage them in conversation about what they're reading. I love that they pick a mix of like very charismatic familiar birds like flamingos, which you saw on that first page, but also birds I'm not really familiar with, like the secretary birds. I didn't know about this delightful and very interesting bird. Unfortunately, like I said, my daughter is really obsessed with story right now, and I've tried to get her interested in this book a couple times and she hasn't been, but I just think that's where she is right now. I'm love that we got this book, and I think maybe in a few months or in a year or two her interests will change and eventually she's going to be able to appreciate how awesome this book is. So I would still definitely recommend it, even though for my particular 3-year-old at this moment, she's not exactly obsessed. The next book I guess we're calling science is Pop-Up Peekaboo Space. Really, it's just a fun pop-up book. I don't know how much science is going to be learned, but there is a fun countdown to blast off, and the pop-ups are very sturdy, which I appreciate. They're not going to be easily destroyed. Something that my husband doesn't like about this book is the inclusion of aliens, because he works for NASA. He's a flight controller. He really doesn't like it when picture books conflate somewhat realistic space science with UFOs and green people and saucers. It's not a super scientific book, but it is very cute and fun, and the pop-ups are very dramatic. My daughter loves this book right now. So okay, the last two books are both on emotional regulation, kind of like dealing with your emotions. So we got Grumpy Monkey and The Rabbit Listened. They're actually very similar. They're both about someone feeling kind of bad, and then a series of animals come along and try to cheer them up in sort of unhelpful ways. And then eventually a friend comes along who just listens and sympathizes with the main character, and that makes them feel better. Put them both on my list because I read that they were both highly recommended in this category of books, and so I was a little surprised at how similar they are. That doesn't seem to bother my daughter though. She loves both of them. The main reason she loves Grumpy Monkey, where the monkey screams, "I'm not grumpy!" She loves this page. So basically this book is about like, it's okay to be grumpy. Sometimes you're grumpy. When you're grumpy, it's not helpful for everybody to come along and try to cheer you up or make you pretend like you're feeling okay. Like it's okay to just sit and be grumpy until you feel better sometimes. And then The Rabbit Listened is about dealing with disappointment and sadness. So this little boy Taylor builds this magnificent castle, and then, oh no, crash, boom, it gets knocked over. Taylor's very sad. Again, a series of animals come along and they are trying to cheer him up in different ways and make him feel better. But Taylor just doesn't want to do any of those things until the rabbit comes along, and the rabbit just listens. And that's what Taylor needed, was someone to listen to him. And then he gets the gumption to build again and create an even more amazing structure. This one of the two is the one my daughter has preferred. I don't know if it's the art style or it's so cute, the little rabbit. I don't know, every kid wants a little bunny friend to listen to them, I guess. So this one has also been a favorite. So those are the books that my daughter got for her birthday. I'm so grateful to all my friends for buying us new books so that we can have some new stuff to read. I am still obviously wounded up here from getting my mole cut off, and I haven't gotten the biopsy results back, but hopefully they're fine. I've been dealing with a killer migraine, so if I was kind of low energy today, that's why. And I'll see you next time. Bye.